Welcome. We are giving everyone a chance to join, and we will get started soon. Thank you for joining our webinar on viewing the latest feature releases for Sage Intacct. My name is Ali Pakalnis, and I will help facilitate our webinar today. Before we get started, here are a few tips on using the Zoom platform so you can engage with our presenters and have the best experience possible. You should see a Zoom toolbar with icons for Ask a Question, Chat, and Raise Your Hand. You can use the Ask a Question or Chat to submit a question or comment. If you need any assistance, click on the Raise Your Hand button, and I will connect with you to help. We do encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to answer them all at the end. If we didn't answer your question, we will follow up with you personally following the presentation. Next slide. If you experience audio issues, you can access your audio settings and test your audio when you are already in the meeting. At the bottom left-hand corner of the Zoom meeting toolbar, you'll find either the headphone or microphone logo to join audio or mute/unmute. Click Join Audio to choose to connect your computer audio or dial into the meeting with a phone. Once your audio is connected, click Mute to disable the audio or Unmute to enable your audio. Within 72 hours of the webinar, you will receive a link to download the slide deck and recorded presentation. Next. Today's webinar does qualify for CPE credits. To receive your credits, you must actively respond to each polling question and stay on for the duration of the webinar. If you have any difficulty answering the poll questions, please email elevate@armaninollp.com with questions. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters, Michelle Schimberg and Jennifer Jensen.
Thanks, Ali. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michelle Schimberg. I'm a director here at Armanino. Excuse me. I've been here for 6 years helping clients use Sage Intacct. I come to you with almost 30 years of experience leading finance and accounting teams, and I was a user of Sage Intacct for 5 years. So this is definitely something I'm very passionate about, and I'm super excited to help you guys today. Jenny?
Yep, my name is Jennifer Jensen. I'm a manager here on the mid-market Intacct team. I've been consulting now for close to 4 years, coming to you with about 10 years of experience, a lot of it in manufacturing, inventory, purchasing, and such. And I'm really excited to share with you guys our release for Intacct.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay. Our learning objectives today are to identify the new release features of your solution, to demonstrate the new user experience and navigation to ease adoption, and to discuss a high-level overview of Sage Intacct or Sage's Transform 2022. Here's our agenda for today. And without further ado, Transform 2022. So for those of you who don't know what Transform is, it is Sage Intacct's user conference. They have it every year. It's usually filled with a bunch of great content and has some great announcements. So first of all, this year they announced a new product integration with Microsoft. So Sage Intacct and Sage Active are combining with Microsoft Azure to give customers access to Sage Intacct in Microsoft Teams. This will be coming to simplify and automate your workflows. So this is giving people the ability to use Teams, which they're familiar with, to access approvals and things like that for Sage Intacct. Also, they announced the acquisition of Bright Pearl, which is a retail inventory planner. It integrates to Shopify, which I know we've had tons of clients ask for that integration, so it's exciting to see that. Amazon, 20 plus other applications, and it reduces supply chain inconsistencies and stock control. And then upcoming industries that they're focusing on that they announced at this conference was they are focusing on CRE, manufacturing, and retail. So they are continuing to broaden their footprint. Some highlights that you should look for in your current environments. In the future releases, you will see partial ownership consolidations. So that's very exciting. Enhanced AP bill automation with 1099 e-filing. We'll talk more about that. And enhancements and integrations that will reduce supply chain inconsistency and give us better stock control. Enhancements to the list user experience with easier ways to query rather than building reports. And redesign data import migration that will simplify error messages. I know that every one of us is excited to hear that. We can't see the import process, making it simpler will be wonderful for everybody. Okay, so the first thing that was in this release was related to compliance. And they have made compliance easier, finding what they are, how they're compliant. So leveraging the experience of global audit experts, the Help Center provides new section on compliance. It identifies key compliance areas and provides considerations and guidance to apply to your internal controls. So just a couple of examples of the Intacct audit experience that they talk about how you can leverage and meet your compliance needs. We're using checklists, using a dashboard to organize audit work papers, system-generated allocations with drill down, approval documentation, the audit trail, audit history reports, and compliance documentation storage for things such as board minutes, audit or annual reports, org charts, etc. So the first thing that for reporting, the first thing they've done is they've added a new audit history report that you can download. It is in the customization packages. So you'll either have, in your environment, you'll either have platform services or customization services. This will be, it's user permission based, whether you have access to that. But if you have access, you go to custom packages, package library, and then you install those packages. And after you install the packages, you will now have the audit history reports available. So I thought I would show you that.
Michelle, these are audit reports that are available. It's just that install button will actually bring them into your environment, correct?
Exactly. So you have to install the package, which we'll do here in one moment here. Oops. So if I go into my environment and I go to platform services and I go over here to customization packages, you will see that I now have, in the package library, I have audit history by user report and audit history by object definition. So if I install the package and I install the package, now if I go back and I look at my custom reports, my reports are right here. And to run them, what I would do is run it. And it gives you the ability to select a to and from date. You can select one object or multiple objects. You can select what actions you want to audit. And you can select what users you want to audit. The other report, same thing. You're going to go over and run that report. And this allows you again to select by a user what objects they have accessed and what they have done. So that's pretty exciting. Definitely will help people with their audits. All right, so budgeting planning, over to you, Jenny.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. So we have a polling question to start us off in the budgeting and planning module. All right. So are you using Sage Intacct planning? We give you a single option on this one. So yes, I love it. Yes, but I'm still learning it. I purchased it, but it's still in the box. What is SIP? And am I supposed to budget?
We have to put one in there for those of you who are jokesters.
We'll give you just a couple minutes to answer. Or not, maybe not that long, but Allie, you can decide when you're ready to close it. All right. So it looks like most are not familiar with SIP. This is an extension to Intacct that you can get, which allows you to budget more dynamically than what Intacct offers as the out-of-the-box budgeting option. So this is it's a really cool feature, and we'll kind of get started with the what's been newly released in Intacct. So some enhancements to the budgeting and planning tool. They've now released with the grid entry in the stat accounts. So grid entry is going to look more like Excel, so more familiar for the users. It will allow the users to enter and adjust any of the data with that familiar grid format, which is like Excel. You can easily toggle between your traditional form view and the grid view, which we'll show you in the next slide. You can quickly enter your data into the specific cells or a range of cells, much like Excel does. And then you can also kind of move between Excel and SIP to move your budget information over. You can import in your statistical account data from Sage Intacct into the planning tool, which allows for improved data entry flexibility and efficiency. You can import or create your non-monetary accounts to use in driver-based modeling. The new budget line type can be created manually or through the SI integration. And then this will help enhance your business planning and modeling using those operational metrics. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is what the grid entry is going to look like. So very easy to read. We have all of our categories kind of listed on the left side. And then we have our dates listed across the top, then with all the amounts that are listed out for the budget. And
Jenny,
then if you, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is very exciting. I can't tell how many people have said, how come we don't have this? And guess what? They listened.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then you see on the right side, there's that grid entry toggle between on and off. So that's something that was released to be able to kind of go in between. So very cool. Go ahead and go to the next. Then we have construction. This is one of my favorite areas. So with the early adopters program, they'll now have the construction payroll as an option, hopefully released to everyone else using construction in the next couple of releases, but right now it's just in the early adopters. So instead of having to go to a external integration company to manage your payroll, you can now manage it internally and Intacct. So you see there's going to be a new module that's added to the application drop-down list specific for your payroll. This will help in automate your payroll calculations and create your journal entries for you. This will simplify reporting in the US and territories. Will reduce cost overruns and improve your accuracy of future estimates with timely visibility into project labor costs. You can harness the power of your data for detailed reporting, and then it will assist with the state payroll needs associated with any union and non-union organizations. And then if you are interested in being a part of the early adopters, make sure you contact your client manager for some more information on that. All right, next page. All right. Then they released the Sage estimating integration with Sage Intacct Construction. So this will export all of your estimates directly into the construction projects without having to do double entry. And then you can take advantage of the power of industry-leading Sage estimating, which will help quickly create accurate estimates and then export them directly into Sage Intacct. And then again, there's no need to re-enter your data. So it's going to be easily available in the construction module.
And Jenny, this is an example of why Sage's acquisition or combination with Intacct, becoming Sage Intacct, is so helpful, because this is software that they had existing in other products, and now they're being able to tie it into Sage Intacct, which is really exciting.
All right. More information on the Sage estimating features. So it helps with the flow of information between your Sage estimating and Sage construction. It's governed by your job costs, which is good. And then when you're completing it, you'll select job cost information settings for the estimate or the standard database in Sage estimating. And by setting up those settings that you select during an export, it'll help with flexibility. It'll allow your bids to be more competitive and profitable, even during these periods where we're seeing high inflation. Ability to view estimates in ways that are important to you, and then it does make your reporting more powerful. Okay, and then inventory control and order entry. So the fulfillment for sales order is still in the early adopters program. So it was launched in that program in the 2022 release 2, and it still continues to be available in that early adopters program. Hopefully we'll be seeing this coming soon. And then again, if you want to be involved in the fulfillment early adopters program, contact your client manager for more information.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, accounts payable. First thing they've done in accounts payable is they've added the bank file payments. They are now more robust and flexible to support your needs. So you can pay AP advances using bank file payments as a payment method now. And that supports the AUD, UER, GBP, and ZAR payment methods, currencies. And then you can pay vendors in France and Ireland in euro using the bank file payments with the SEPA bank file format. All right, AP automation. I know that we are all waiting for this, like with bated breath.
I'm excited about this one.
I'm really excited about it. I'm waiting till when I can actually say it's released, but they are doing a limited release in R4 2022, which is pretty exciting. It's going to be a small handful of clients, but they did announce at Sage Intacct that they will have a broad release in early 2023. Now note that the release will only be available for US-based companies that do not have HIPAA requirements. So it's baby steps with this. But for those of you who have not seen this 15 times, I want to let you know that what's coming is AP automation, which will use OCR to capture data from your PDF invoices. It will create a draft bill using AI. And this is from bills that you've either uploaded or emailed into Intacct. And it automatically attaches that PDF to the vendor invoice, and it leverages GL Outlier to report any exceptions. All right, and our second polling question. So we're curious, for those of you who are users, did you know that in accounts payable, you can use split screen to view attachments? You can set a default expense account. You can duplicate from the last bill, and that you can require an attachment on the vendor if it's a 1099. And this is a multiple choice.
I like the split screen. I think that is
Oh,
a
I
really
do
cool
too.
feature.
I do too. And I like that you can choose. Oh, see, now we're telling the answer, but I love that you can actually choose to either have it automatically pop up or have it just when you select to look at the attachment.
Mm-hmm.
How we doing, Allie? Okay. So it looks like everybody already knows this. The only one that there's a small question about is the requiring an attachment, and what that one was. That does not come out of the box, but it is using a SMART rule, and I wanted to demonstrate that. So let's go in here and let's go into accounts payable. And the first thing I want to show on accounts payable, oops, I need to go into USA. Excuse me for a second. All right, if I go into accounts payable, I wanted to show that if you add an advance, you now have a payment method of ACH bank file. So that's a new release.
That's awesome.
Yep. And let's go add a vendor. So we have a SMART rule set up in this, and we can help you set it up. But what it does is if I add a vendor,
Go to the top, Michelle.
thank you, dear. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if I add a vendor, and I'm going to call it Armanino. And in this one, I have a SMART rule that requires me to put a term on it. Otherwise, it will complain at me. But if I go to additional information and I say 1099 eligible and I hit save, first it's going to ask me about the 1099 information. And I hit save again. And why did that not just work, Jenny? It worked earlier.
Go back into the record, maybe.
Thank you. Oops.
There we go. Okay. It's updated. Now try to save it from here.
There we
There
go.
you go.
The
So you can,
1099 box has been checked. If attachment W9 is required on the additional information tab, or an attachment is required. So you can have this either warn you or you can have it not allow you to save. So we're just pointing out the functionality there with smart events. And I think that was the only one that was really not known. What did I do there? There we go. All right, lease accounting. So for those, we've been talking about lease accounting for even longer than Sage Intacct has been talking about AP automation, and lease accounting. ASC 842 is finally really coming, and what Sage Intacct has, the Sage Intacct lease accounting early adopter. What this is a module within Sage Intacct, which allows Sage Intacct Lease Accounting is a new application that allows lessees to manage their financial and operational leases to comply with the latest US GAAP and IFRS standards. It provides lessee-based lease tracking and accounting automation for operating leases with the latest ASC 842 and IFRS 16 standards. You centralize and manage your lease contracts. You can automate the accounting recognition. You can tie lease liabilities to the right of use assets, and you can ensure compliance with the updated accounting standards. So again, this is another early adopter. I know this release has a bunch of early adopters, but if you are interested, please contact your account manager. All right, payroll. This is something that's actually current and available today. This is exciting. So ADP, there is now a Sage Intacct payroll is powered by ADP. So this is actually a connector to ADP, much more robust than in prior connections to ADP. This is actually, Sage Intacct is the best-in-class payroll and human capital management solution that integrates seamlessly with Sage Intacct. It brings journal entries, will flow from payroll to Sage Intacct. The employee adds and changes now flow from payroll to Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct time and expense reports will flow to payroll for reimbursement, and the dimension values are synced automatically and they flow to payroll time and attendance for being able to charge to those. So again, if you're interested in this subscription, you need to contact your client manager. Taxes. Form 1099 taxes are now available, and I will show you how to find it on your homepage. But reminder that preparation is key. This is the time of the year that you guys should be looking at your 1099 files and making sure that they are accurate and up to date so that when it comes time to actually pull your 1099s in January, they're there. And if you go to help, you will see that they have a whole list of steps that you can follow. And coming soon, this again is it doesn't say it's in new release, it just says that it's coming soon, but there's 1099s filed, e-filing powered by Tax Bandit. So you'll now be able to e-file your 1099s. I have not received confirmation one way or the other whether or not this will be available by this year, however. It does say it will be a limited release coming soon.
This is going to be something that's really exciting for a lot of our clients.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Mm-hmm. Any way of automating processes is usually received well.
Right, instead of having to print forms.
Yes.
Speaking of print forms, for those of you who don't know, if you go to your home page, you can go to, where is it?
Further down.
Oh, goodness, this one has so much stuff here. Here we go. In resources, you have checks and supplies. You can order them right here from within Sage Intacct. Brings you to the website to order them. And the other thing I wanted to point out was in Intacct Help, which you can also access by coming up here and go to the Help Center. If you put 1099 in, it will come up with a how to do things. And where's that list? And then I wanted to show you compliance. Same thing. There's now a compliance overview section. Oh, let's try that one more time. There it is. So you have a compliance overview about that we talked about earlier. Next, time and expenses. Sage Intelligence time has been expanded to support nonprofits that subscribe to grant tracking. This is great information for our nonprofits that are trying to track and bill out their grants. So nonprofit organizations can automatically track staff time, simplifying the time accounting. Sage Intelligence time has been launched to international customers. It empowers program staff to focus on the project delivery instead of time capture. It automates the capture of reimbursable time down to the minute precision, which is great, and receive electronic statements of time spent to satisfy single audit requirements.
So Michelle,
And
this was released to construction previously, and it's really cool because the feature can pull information from your Outlook calendar to see, kind of meetings that you have scheduled, and then it can pull it into Intacct, and so you don't have to necessarily manage your time for every single thing if it's in your calendar.
Yeah, I've
Pulls
seen
off.
a demo of it and allows it suggests, I
Mhm.
see you spent time on this, where do you want to bill it?
Mhm.
Which is really cool. Makes life a
Mhm.
little easier.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of making life easier, Jenny.
All right. So user experience. So go ahead, next slide. You'll notice when you log into your environment that there's going to be some pop-ups that come to show you some tours and get you more familiar with navigating through Sage Intacct. It will also show you where to find help, training, and videos for your new users. Information will be available in the link here, new to Sage Intacct, such as information with your keyboard shortcuts, customizing your workspace, understanding your permissions, and then finding things quicker as the user. So a nice little bonus there. All right, next polling question. Assigning roles by groups of users is most useful in which of the following situations? And this is a multiple choice question. So if several users are listed for department manager approvals, if several users have the same duties, if every user has different access needs, or if users need the same access for reports and dashboards.
And this is a multiple choice.
All right. Looks like most agree with the if several users have the same duties, and then if the same users need access for reports and dashboards. So those are all great reasons to use groups of users. It just makes life a lot easier for managing your roles for multiple users that should have the same or similar roles. So very good. All right, next. Okay, then we have our web services. All right, so for the dev portal, you'll want to watch the Sage Intacct Developers Portal blog to stay up to date on any of the new features and web services. As far as this release goes, there was no functional changes to Intacct XML API. But if you need more information or want to stay up to date, you can use the link that's down below for the developer website.
All
Okay.
right, Jenny, thank you so much.
Thank you,
So we
Michelle.
have, we have one last polling question because there really wasn't a whole lot of robustness in here. So we thought we would ask some questions and see if you guys had any, if you wanted to see any of this demonstrated. And then are there any questions? Why don't we, while we're doing this, Allie, are there any questions that are outstanding?
Yes. Let me check. So Jason had a question about lease accounting functionality. He asked, why not fixed assets too?
You know what, Jason, let's get that out in the community and vote for that. I don't know the answer to the question.
I wonder
And
if he's currently using the fixed asset module.
you mean using the fixed asset module for that purpose?
Or just in general, or if he's asking for an add-on to the lease accounting for fixed assets specifically.
Right, because 842, what it does is it tells you to record, it changes the way that you're recording operating leases and puts it on your balance sheet. It actually identifies the liability as if you had the asset. So I guess you could use fixed assets to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of different ways to slice that one.
We just had
Somebody
another question come in. Can we see how to add the SMART rule for requiring the W-9 on the 1099 vendor?
Yeah, so we can
Certainly.
go through that.
Well, let's see the polling questions to see what our, if you can show me close the polling and then I can share my screen. All right. So first thing is, Jenny, it's go to platform services.
Yep, for
And
the
I'm
smart
going to
rule.
smart rules, right?
Yep, perfect. And then the
Object is a vendor.
it's right here.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
All
so
right.
you're going to choose your object as the vendor record. All right. And then the type is either warning or error. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you want to stop the user from continuing, then you'd want to do the error option. And then for the events, you want to do add and set. So when you add a new record or when you resave a record, you want it to shoot off the smart rule. And then down below is your condition. So if the vendor form 1099 box is checked, which is what's showing here, and the supporting document is empty, then this smart rule is going to happen. So what I suggest maybe is to take a screenshot of this as a user, and then go back to your Intacct and update it. And then this error message is just kind of explaining what's going on when you did not add the attachment. And then if you go
So
next,
Jenny, let me give them a second to screenshot that if you want to. And I just want to clarify for what a smart rule does. So obviously you have to have permission to platform services in order to do what Jenny's demonstrating here. And what a smart rule does is says, I want you to, upon, if this happens when you try to save it, I want you to fire off this error if I either meet this condition or don't meet this condition. So it's a conditional rule essentially in the system. Would you put it a different way, Jenny?
Nope, I think that's perfect.
Okay.
All right, and then this is just naming the smart rule. And then I always like to give some detailed information on the description for why I'm creating the rule. So you see that information here. And that's
all
it.
right. Cool. All right. So Jenny, the first one was run reports in HTML and freeze the first column. You want to walk me through that one?
Yep. So go to financial report.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I always go to report center. Okay.
All right. And then run it in HTML.
So maybe a balance sheet detail.
Yep, that's fine. Let's see. All right, so this is where you can freeze. So if you had multiple columns listed and it was kind of taking up the whole screen, you can freeze the first column and you'll see a line is added here. And then you can scroll the bottom. So it works mainly when you have multiple columns.
I'm wondering if I want to pull different, but yeah, so that's really cool. That's really cool functionality.
And what you're demonstrating here is adding comments, annotate.
All right, next is group reports and schedule them to run on a specific day of the month. So what you can do here is if I go to reports.
And I think it's under setup.
I think so too.
And
I go to report group. And if I add a report group, I can name my report group. And I can make it public. And I can pick the reports. So I'm going to say I want to end the AP aging graph. And I'm just randomly selecting some reports. So the point here is you can pull custom reports, you can pull financial reports, you can pull memorized reports, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then if I save this, and I look for the one that I just did. Now you can schedule over here. So first thing you can run it. And when you run it, it asks you, do you want it to be printable or Excel? And if you run it as printable, it comes out as a PDF and stacks, meaning one report is on top of the other. And if you run it as Excel, it will actually come out as an Excel spreadsheet with different tabs for each report. And if you want to schedule it, you can schedule it to go to this is where you can take a group of reports and filter them by a department or location group, which is actually a really nice feature rather than having to save a report for each department in your list of reports. You can tell it the start date and the end date of the schedule, and you go ahead.
The recurrence, if you start here,
Yes.
if you put in like today's date or something like that, or the first, yeah, and then ending, change that to end date, or yeah, that's fine. There's also run it at the end of like when you close the period.
There is that, and I'm wondering if
There it
There
is,
it is.
following general ledger close.
Yep. Let's say never for right
There you
now.
go. That's
So we're going to say
perfect.
never. So if you have a group of reports you want to issue out at the end of once you've closed your general ledger, that's not your sub ledgers, but your actual general ledger close, it will then fire those reports off, and you can tell it to email. And when you do email, you can actually email it to a string of people with a subject. So if you had 4 people in a department group that you wanted to have them all get the same report, you could put their emails in here, do a subject line, and fire it off. So that's a really cool functionality I think people don't use very often. All right, calculate multiple amounts in the amount field. And the answer to that question, if I am going into accounts payable and I add a bill, when I come into the transaction amount, if I say plus 120 plus or 212 plus 25 plus 40, it's actually it is a type, it's like a 10 key, which is just a cool little feature I don't think a lot of people know about. Creating dimension relationships to default amounts when in an account or dimension. Okay, let's go look at, I have a vendor set up and I have a vendor relationship on my vendor that is for department. So if I look at Boston Properties, I just want to show you on my vendor, I edit that vendor. If I edit, there we go. A couple things to point out on this vendor. Down at the bottom, I have created a dimension relationship between department and the vendor. So if I select a vendor on a transaction, this department will automatically populate. Note that I can choose to have that be overridden or not, allow overriding or not. I do have it overridden in this particular instance. And one other thing I want to show you on here is that you can default on here an expense account on your vendors. Now, I know a lot of people using purchasing. This does not work on purchasing, but what you can do is create that same dimension relationship we talked about between a vendor and an item. So if I add a bill now, go into bills and just hit, and I select that vendor called Boston Properties, I default in my account and I default in my department. In the way that I have it set up, I could select something different, but I have it defaulted, which makes life a lot easier. It also allows you, if, as an example, you're a nonprofit and you need to do you want to tag everything with a restriction, you can default between, let's say, an account and a default department and a default restriction and a default other dimensions that you're using, and allow people to override it, but at least that way the boxes are filled. And one other thing to point out is one of the questions was populating from last bill. So again, when I enter an AP bill and I select the vendor, populate from last bill shows up. If you check populate from last bill, you'll notice that it has filled in all of my information down here, including, by the way, the attachment. So you do have to delete the attachment and put a new attachment in if you had a different bill. But this makes key entry a lot faster. Anything else to add on that, Jenny, that I missed?
Nope, I think that's perfect.
Okay. Customizing the layout. Let's go back to that same bill.
Michelle, we're on polling question.
I know, I'm trying to get to, trying to see the list. There we go. All right, so customizing the layout. So let's say in this environment, I never use class. And this again is a permission-based change. So you have to have permissions to do this, and it is a global change. So if I change this, it will be global for everybody. So if I edit the entries layout, I can choose to pull class segment down to, and when you drag it down, you have to wait for that little arrow to show up, or that little gray line. But now I've taken class out of this. It doesn't mean it's not available to transact to. It just means it isn't always in my entries, my layout. I can also reorder. So if I wanted my transaction amount, let's see, I want my location over here. See when it becomes a gray bar and I drop it and I save layout. Now my location's moved over here and you see the class is not available. Anything else on that, Jenny?
Nope. The only thing I guess would be make sure to check that orange box there so that it applies to all views.
Thank you. Let me point that out. So if I edit entries layout, when I check this orange box, because what might happen is you're looking at edit, you're editing something when you change it. And then when someone goes to create it and you forgot to check this box, it'll still be the same way. I just had that happen with a client the other day. Okay, add approvals, approval lists, and quick navigation to approval screen to a dashboard. Okay, so did you know that you can, I'm going to go to a different environment. Actually, it makes it a little bit easier. All right. So on the approvals list, so if I went to accounts payable and approve payments, and I wanted to create a new view of this, let's say I only want to see the vendor name, the vendor, the total due, and the payment amount. I could create a new view. And I want the payment status, the payment method. I do want the submitter, actually, the date, the account.
You can add the document check number. That would be a good field.
Okay. And now when you're adding a view, so I should have backed up. When you add the view, the second step is you can rename the columns if you wanted to rename this as just status as an example. And then my next choice is I could filter this by any of the columns. So this is one way you can make a report in a list that isn't really you don't have to create a custom report. Now I can tell it what I want to sort it by, and maybe I'm going to sort this by vendor name. And I'm going to call this payment approval. And when I deploy it, make sure you deploy it, otherwise it will not be visible on a dashboard. So if I save that, and we'll look at what it looks like. So here's your approved payments. Now what I can do is I can put that onto a dashboard. So if I go to I add dashboard. and I add that to a dashboard, I can go and tell it it is a record and it's approved payments and ask me what view I want. I hit save. Now, if you think of your approvers and their experience, they can come into the approvals dashboard, see what they have as approvals. And then the other thing we did on this dashboard is custom navigation was a release. I want to say about a year ago, they released this functionality that you can add effectively a hyperlink to that list. I think that's really slick. I love dashboards.
Mhm.
Any comments on that, Jenny?
No, I could go all day probably on dashboards.
I know,
There's
I could too.
so much that you can do to customize it and make it more useful for all of your users. Or I know you've said before, when you're going through an audit, you can have a dashboard as their way of getting all their information from you. So it's really cool
Exactly.
opportunities with dashboards.
Here, I'll show a quick. All right, fine. You just triggered me. Let's show that one really quickly. This was something we presented at Sage Intacct conference. So what we created here was a dashboard to give you some ideas of what you can do with dashboards. We created an audit dashboard. We can give employee user access to our auditors, give them access to this dashboard. And from this dashboard, they can navigate around your system. So they can get to general ledger or their bills list or the invoice list or a trial balance. But what we've done here is we have a PBC trial balance, which is prepared by client. So it's their request list essentially. And each of these is numbered and identified. So this is my board minutes. Then I might have a link here for my board members. Maybe this is a link to my website, or it's a link to a SharePoint. The PBC is also a link to a SharePoint. So if you just click here, you could also use the checklists in Sage Intacct. But this is just it's just a list that's on a SharePoint that my team has all been populating, and I can see what the status of things is. And then you might make your general ledger for your audit year and memorize that general ledger report. But this is just an idea of, as you are preparing for your audit, which I'm sure a lot of you are doing right now, you want to, as you're solving for how you're going to answer the PBCs, put it on a dashboard. And then next year, all you have to do is all you have to do is change the date, and most of your PBCs are prepared. The other thing we created here was we create all of our actual audit financial statements. So we do new account groups so that it ties to the audit and it's on your dashboard. And that way, when you're validating against what the auditors have, you have something to validate too. The other thing is, as you're solving for the different footnotes that you have, if you're creating reports for the different footnotes, I recommend putting them on your dashboard so that it's just an easy place to get to.
Awesome.
All right,
Thanks, Michelle.
You're very welcome. I think that was enough demoing for you. So let's get back to our regularly scheduled program here. All right. So Armanino, for those of you who are not familiar, we do have Armanino-led Intacct virtual classes. This is a link when you get this PowerPoint. It will have a link to our Armanino Academy where you can sign up for those classes. The three that I like the most are Report Writing 1, Report Writing 2, and Report Writing 3. I think there's also a dashboard. As you can tell, I'm very much into the report writing functionality in this product. Okay, and finally, back to you, Allie. Or do we have more questions, actually?
We don't. Jessica has been doing a wonderful job answering all of them. So no more open questions. Well, one just came in. Yes, you will receive this recording. Other than that, no more open questions. I think that wraps up everything for today. Thank you for attending, and please remember to complete the survey as you close out of the webinar. Bye, everyone.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Appreciate your time.